For barring 19 relatives from my lake house after my mom charged them to stay there? I'm Fiona, 37, and in my family, I was the daughter and niece who was remembered whenever something needed paying for, fixing, cleaning up, or explained away quietly. My mother, Judith, called me difficult whenever I asked basic questions, and my younger brother Blake was treated like a miracle every time he managed to show up wearing sunglasses and carrying no plan. For years, I kept a little list on my refrigerator of things I needed to handle for Aunt Marlene's lake house. Replace the porch light. Call about the water pressure. Check the pipes after the first hard freeze. Ask the insurance company why the renewal jumped. I did those things because Marlene was the only older person in my family who made me feel like I wasn't an extra in my own childhood. The lake house had been in her name for as long as I could remember. It wasn't huge or glamorous. It had faded cedar siding, a narrow kitchen with yellow cabinet doors, and 3 bedrooms that always smelled faintly of sunscreen and old quilts. The dock leaned a little to the left. The screen door slapped shut hard enough to make everyone yell, "Easy!" even when no one was near it. Still, every summer my family treated that place like it belonged to all of them. The first time I realized there had been a family reunion without me, I was scrolling through photos late on a Sunday night. My cousin had posted a picture of everyone standing near the dock in matching blue paper crowns from a party store. The caption said, "Whole family together at our favorite place." I stared at the picture for a while, counting people. My mother was in the middle with one arm around Blake. Uncle Henry was holding a plastic cup and squinting at the sun. Tara was sitting on the dock with 2 little kids beside her. Even relatives who usually skipped everything were there. I wasn't. The next morning I called my mother. Was there a reunion this weekend? There was a pause long enough for me to hear the scrape of a spoon against her cereal bowl. "Oh," she said. "I thought someone told you." "No one told me." Well, it came together quickly. The photos showed matching shirts, custom cups, a rented pontoon boat, and enough food to feed 30 people. How quickly? "Fiona, don't start. You're always busy anyway." I wasn't busy that weekend. I had spent Saturday replacing a leaking bathroom faucet and eating takeout alone. I told myself it was a mistake because that explanation hurt less. The following summer I found out in almost the same way. This time the pictures showed the younger kids holding sparklers near the water. My mother had written, "Traditions matter." When I asked her why I hadn't been invited, she sighed like I was asking her to defend a parking ticket. "You would have complained about the noise." "I don't complain about noise. You complain when people are careless." "That's not the same thing." Blake laughed in the background. "You would have hated it," he called. "Too many people. Too much food. Not enough control." "You don't know that," I said. "I was never asked." He made a little humming sound like I had proved his point. That became the pattern. I was never formally banned. No one sent me a message saying I wasn't welcome. They just planned around me, gathered without me, posted pictures afterward, and then acted wounded when I noticed. Sometimes my mother said someone else had been responsible for invitations. Sometimes she said she thought Aunt Marlene had called me. Sometimes she insisted I had mentioned being unavailable months earlier, even when I hadn't. The excuses changed. The outcome didn't. At the 3rd reunion I missed, I had mailed gifts for the younger kids because Tara had mentioned they were doing a treasure hunt. I sent little waterproof flashlights and inexpensive compasses. A week later, I saw the children holding them in photos. No one mentioned where the gifts came from. When I asked my mother whether they arrived, she said, "Yes, everyone thought they were cute." Did anyone know they were from me? I'm sure they did. They didn't. Tara later admitted she thought Judith had bought them. The part that embarrassed me most was how long I kept hoping the next summer would be different. I kept thinking that if I did enough, stayed calm enough, made myself easy enough, someone would remember that I belonged there too. Aunt Marlene noticed. She never challenged my mother in front of the whole family. That wasn't her style. Marlene was quiet, observant, and very hard to fool. When she called, she asked specific questions and waited for real answers. One fall, she called to tell me the roof over the back bedroom had started leaking. "Judith says Blake knows a guy," she said. "Does Blake's guy have a name?" "No." "Does he have insurance?" "Also no." I drove out the next day, took pictures, and called 3 roofing companies. The repair wasn't catastrophic, but it was more than Marlene could comfortably cover at once. I paid the deposit and told her we'd figure out the rest later. She tried to argue. You have your own expenses. So do you. That is not an argument. It is in this family. She laughed softly, then got serious. You always show up when it isn't fun, she said. People notice that less, but I notice. I saved that sentence in my head because I needed it more than I wanted to admit. Over the next several years, I helped with insurance gaps when Marlene became ill, arranged winter checks, paid a pest control bill after mice got into the pantry, and covered part of the cost of replacing 2 damaged dock boards. I didn't pay for everything, but I paid enough that I started keeping receipts in a brown envelope. My mother hated that envelope. The first time she saw it on Marlene's kitchen table, she said, "Why are you turning family into an accounting project? I'm keeping track of house expenses." That sounds controlling. No, it sounds like record keeping. Blake was leaning against the counter eating potato chips from the bag. You make everything transactional, he said. I looked at him. Did you pay the trash pickup fee from July? He stared back at me, chewing. That's not the point. It became the point when the bill went past due. My mother folded her arms. This is exactly why people don't include you. You make everyone uncomfortable. I remember how quiet the room became after that. Not because anyone disagreed with her, but because she had said the hidden part out loud. Aunt Marlene put her hand over mine. Judith, she said. She asked a fair question. My mother rolled her eyes and left the room. Later, Marlene and I sat on the porch while the sun went down behind the trees. She had wrapped a faded blanket around her shoulders even though it wasn't cold. People love this place most when the grill is hot and the lake looks good in pictures, she said. They love it less when the septic alarm goes off. I'm not trying to take over. I know. Mom thinks I am. Your mother thinks a question is an attack if she doesn't like the answer. I looked toward the water. Marlene, I don't want this to become a fight. She was quiet for a moment. Some fights arrive whether you order them or not. A few months later, after another problem with the homeowner's insurance, she left me a voicemail while I was in the shower. I listened to it once and then forgot it was backed up to my email. Her voice sounded tired but clear. Fiona, I handled the paperwork we discussed. Judith and Blake know why. If they ever act surprised, do not let that confuse you. People show you who they are when a place needs work, not when it looks pretty in July. At the time, I thought she meant the insurance. I didn't know she meant the house. Marlene died the following spring. Her health had been declining, but the final turn happened quickly. One week she was complaining about bland soup and correcting the nurse about how to fold her cardigan. The next week she was gone. Grief made everything feel out of order. I would reach for my phone to tell her something, then remember. I kept thinking about the lake house sitting empty with her mug still beside the sink. The legal paperwork took several weeks. When I learned she had left me the lake house, I read the sentence 3 times before I understood it. The deed had been transferred according to the estate plan she had put in place. The house, land, contents, and related responsibilities were mine. My first feeling was not victory. It was weight. I thought about the insurance, property taxes, dock repairs, aging plumbing, and every room where I could still picture Marlene. I also thought about the reunions I hadn't been invited to. My mother's reaction came less than an hour after the family learned. She called me while I was sitting at my kitchen table with the deed paperwork spread in front of me. There has to be a mistake, she said. There isn't. Marlene would never cut everyone out. She didn't leave the house to everyone. That is not what I said. It's what you mean. Her voice sharpened. That house belongs to the family. Legally, it belongs to me. Legally, she repeated, as if I had used an obscene word. Do you hear yourself? Yes. Your aunt would be heartbroken to hear you talk like this. I looked down at Marlene's signature. She signed it. You pressured her. That landed harder than I expected. I paid for repairs. I checked on her. I brought groceries. I handled insurance when no one else returned her calls. I did not pressure her. You always wanted to be in charge. No, Mom. I wanted someone to be responsible. She hung up. Blake called next. He sounded less angry and more offended, like I had taken a seat he had assumed was his. It belongs to all of us in Spirit, he said. Spirit doesn't pay property taxes. It's a lake house, Fiona, not a courtroom. That's convenient for you. You know what I mean. I know exactly what you mean. You want full access and no responsibility. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're really going to turn Marlene's death into a power trip? No. I'm going to review the bills. You are unbelievable. The first thing I did was gather everything. The property tax statement, the insurance policy, utility accounts, repair invoices, the old waste pickup fees, the receipts from the roof, the dock boards, the pest treatment, and the screen door that had never been properly fixed after one of the reunions. The numbers weren't enormous individually. Together they told a story. 4 years, people had arrived carrying sunscreen, folding chairs, and beer. They left behind full trash cans, wet towels, damaged screens, missing life jackets, and vague promises that someone would handle it. Usually, someone meant Marlene. Later it meant me. I also found photos I had taken after previous visits. A stained mattress cover, a bent patio chair, a deep scratch across the dining table, a trash bag split open in the shed, the waste company's late notice, a loose railing near the porch steps. None of it was dramatic enough to start a family war by itself. That was how the pattern survived. Every problem was small enough to dismiss, but together they kept costing money and time. I knew there would be another reunion attempt. My mother considered the summer gathering her event, even though she didn't own the house and rarely cleaned it. So I sent certified letters to both Judith and Blake. The language was simple. The lake house was privately owned. No one had permission to enter, stay overnight, organize an event, or give access to anyone else without my written approval. Future requests had to be made directly to me. I didn't threaten anyone. I didn't accuse anyone. I didn't post anything online. I mailed the notice with tracking. My mother signed for hers on a Tuesday morning. Blake's was delivered the next day. Neither responded. 2 weeks later, Tara called me. She began carefully. I'm not trying to get in the middle. People in my family usually said that right before stepping directly into the middle. Okay. Your mom said there's tension about the reunion. There is no reunion at the house. That's not what she said. What did she say? That you were upset about the will, but you'd calm down once everyone arrived. I looked at the certified mail confirmation on my laptop. She signed for a letter saying no one has permission. There was a long pause. She said you agreed to be reasonable. What does reasonable mean? You know, let the tradition continue. She invited people to my house after I told her not to. Tara exhaled. I thought it was more of a misunderstanding. It isn't. Well, people have already requested time off. Some are bringing the kids. There's a bounce house reservation. Then Judith needs to cancel it. Can't you just let this year happen and figure it out afterward? That was the old family formula. Absorb the disrespect now so everyone else can stay comfortable. Discuss it later when nobody intends to change anything. No. Fiona. No. She was warned in writing. Tara went quiet. I'll talk to her. The next day my mother texted me. Once everyone is there, you'll remember what family means. I read it twice. It was not a request. It was a plan. Blake left a voicemail that evening. You really want little kids standing outside because you need to win? Think about how that will look. That was when I understood what they were doing. They were going to bring a crowd. Coolers. Children. Older relatives. Folding chairs. People who had driven hours. They expected the pressure of the driveway to do what the letter had not. They assumed I would look at the kids, panic about being called cruel, and unlock the door. My mother knew me well enough to understand that public embarrassment had controlled me for years. She didn't know me well enough to realize it had stopped working. A few days later, Tara sent me a screenshot. It was a payment confirmation to my mother. The memo said, Lake House Maintenance. Tara wrote, did she send this to you? I stared at the amount. $300. No, I replied. What is it? She called immediately. Judith said everyone was contributing for cleaning and maintenance. She never asked me about cleaning. Maybe she was going to pay for it. With whom? I don't know. Did she collect money from other people? I think so. She said it was easier if one person handled everything. How much did you send? $300. For what? Cleaning, food, maintenance, and the bounce house deposit. Food is one thing. The bounce house is one thing. But she does not maintain the house. Tara sounded less defensive now. Wait. She didn't send you anything. This is the first I'm hearing of money. By that evening Henry had called too. He sounded embarrassed. I sent Judith $450, he said. The memo says reunion cleaning fee. She did not hire a cleaner through me. She said you wanted help covering the costs. I never authorized her to collect money. There was silence. I thought this was a misunderstanding, he said. So did everyone. That's why she keeps using them. Fiona, I did not know. You also never asked. He took that without arguing. No, he said. I didn't. I spent the next morning at the lake house. The air inside was stale from being closed up. I opened windows, ran the taps, and walked through each room with my phone camera. I documented everything. The broken latch on the screen door. The old stains on the mattress cover. 3 missing life jackets. Trash jammed behind the shed. A cracked kitchen chair. Damage to 2 dock boards that looked newer than the repairs I had paid for. A stack of disposable plates shoved into a cabinet beside a mouse-chewed bag of napkins. On the refrigerator, under a magnet shaped like a fish, was an old handwritten grocery list from Marlene. Coffee, bread, lemons. Fiona likes the peach tea. I stood there longer than I meant to. Then I took the list down, folded it carefully, and put it in my purse. After that, I called a locksmith. You want all exterior locks changed? He asked when he arrived. Every one. He replaced the front, back, side, and shed locks. I tested each key and saved the receipt. I also had the entrance camera checked. It was an older system Marlene had installed after packages went missing, but it still covered the porch and driveway. I replaced the memory card and made sure the timestamp was correct. The following morning, the camera caught Blake walking up to the front door. He tried the old key. When it didn't work, he pulled it out, stared at it, and tried again. Then he looked directly at the camera and covered the lens with his hand. He didn't break anything. He didn't force the door. But he had come to test access before the reunion. I saved the clip. That night, while searching my email for an old insurance statement, I found Marlene's voicemail backup. I listened to the full message. This time I heard the part one had forgotten. Blake came by with a form he said would let him manage the house if I got too tired. He said you would make too many rules. I told him no. Judith knows. They both know why I chose you. Do not let them call it confusion later. Fiona. You kept this place standing when everyone else treated it like a free vacation. I sat in the dark at my kitchen table with my laptop open and Marlene's voice filling the room. That was the moment the last piece fell into place. My mother hadn't been surprised by the inheritance. Blake hadn't simply assumed the house would remain available. They had known Marlene intended to leave control to me, and Blake had tried to get ahead of it. When Marlene refused, they did what they always did. Shaped a version of events that made me the problem. My mother told people I was distant by choice. Blake told people I hated family gatherings. The reunions went on without me, and everyone found it easier to believe I preferred being absent. Now Judith was telling them I had approved a reunion at my own house while collecting money in the name of maintenance. It was the same lie, just scaled up. I contacted the appropriate local office and explained that I owned the property, had formally denied entry, and expected a possible dispute involving a relative who might try to force access. I didn't ask for a dramatic show of authority. I wanted a neutral presence nearby in case Blake decided embarrassment mattered more than common sense. I also had a no-entry notice notarized and placed a weatherproof copy beside the door. Then I prepared a one-page timeline. It included the date the deed transferred, the date Judith signed for the certified letter, the date Blake's notice was delivered, the payment receipts from Tara and Henry, the repair and utility expenses I had paid, and the amount of money Judith had collected that I could verify. I printed copies of the deed, insurance policy, property tax statement, utility bills, repair invoices, locksmith receipt, and payment screenshots. I put everything into separate folders. Not because I wanted to hold court on the porch. Because my mother's strongest weapon had always been confusion. She could turn any conversation into fog. She would deny one detail, soften another, insist everyone remembered things differently, and then accuse me of making the family uncomfortable. Paper doesn't get uncomfortable. The morning of the reunion, I arrived at the lake house before 8 o'clock. The lake was flat and gray-blue. A few insects hovered over the grass. I swept the porch, moved 2 planters away from the steps, and checked the locks. For a while nothing happened. I sat in one of Marlene's old chairs with coffee in a travel mug and listened to birds in the trees. My stomach was tight enough that I could barely drink. I thought about leaving. I could have let them find the locked door without me there. The notice was posted. The camera was recording. Legally and practically, I didn't need to stand on the porch while 19 people stared at me. Then I realized leaving would still be hiding. For 12 summers, my family had gathered at that house while I existed somewhere outside the frame. If I disappeared that morning too, my mother would fill in the story for everyone. So I stayed. The first SUV arrived just after 9 o'clock. Tara stepped out carrying a beach bag and a case of bottled water. Her husband unloaded folding chairs. 2 children climbed out wearing swimsuits under their clothes. She saw me on the porch and stopped. "You're really here." "It's my house." Her face tightened. "I told Judith this might happen. Did she refund you?" "No." Before we could say more, another car pulled in behind them. Then another. Within 15 minutes, the driveway was full of minivans and SUVs. People lifted coolers from trunks. Beach towels were draped over shoulders. Someone carried a bag stuffed with sunscreen and bug spray. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years unloaded a plastic tub of lawn games. Then the bounce house trailer arrived. The driver rolled down his window and asked where he should set up. "Nowhere on this property," I said. He looked from me to the growing crowd. Judith's car came in last. She stepped out wearing white pants, sandals, and the bright social smile she used whenever she wanted witnesses. Blake climbed out from the passenger side carrying a speaker under one arm. My mother spread her hands like she had arranged a surprise party for me. "There she is," she called. "See? I told everyone she'd come around." A few people gave nervous laughs. She walked toward the porch with her arms open. I stepped back. Her smile stayed in place, but her eyes changed. "Don't be like that," she murmured. "No one is going inside today." The laughter stopped. One of the children asked why the door was locked. Tara quietly guided them toward the car and handed them a snack. Judith kept her voice soft. "Fiona, don't do this in front of the family. That only works when the family knows the truth." Her smile disappeared. "We drove all this way. I told you in writing not to come. You sent an ugly legal letter while everyone was grieving. I sent a clear notice because you were inviting people to my property." "Your property," she repeated loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Listen to you." Blake came around the side of the car. "It's a lake house, Fiona. Not a courtroom. You tested your old key 3 days ago." His expression shifted. "What?" "The camera works." Several people looked at him. He shrugged. "I came to check on the place. You covered the camera. That thing barely works." "It worked well enough." Judith held up one hand. "Enough. People have children here. We are not doing this." "You brought the children." Her face tightened. "I brought the family to a family house." "No. You brought them to my house after signing for a letter that said you didn't have permission." A cousin near the driveway spoke up. "Judith said this was handled." "It was handled," my mother said quickly. "Fiona is upset and trying to make a point. I am making a boundary." Blake laughed. "You really want kids standing outside because you got lucky on a deed?" "No. I want the adults who were warned in writing to take responsibility for bringing them." He took 2 steps toward the porch. I didn't move. "The house belongs to all of us in spirit," he said. Spirit doesn't pay property taxes. Someone near the cars coughed to hide a laugh. Blake's face darkened. You always wanted a reason to act better than everyone. No. I wanted the person in charge to be the person paying the bills. Turns out that was me. Judith turned toward the group. This is what I have dealt with for years. Every kindness becomes a receipt. Every tradition becomes an argument. I reached behind the porch chair and picked up the first folder. You want to discuss receipts? My mother looked at the folder and then at me. Don't be ridiculous. Did you collect maintenance money from Tara? Tara stepped forward slightly. Judith didn't look at her. I collected contributions for the reunion. Did you collect a cleaning fee from Henry? Henry was standing beside his SUV with his arms crossed now. My mother's tone changed. I was trying to keep everyone together. With my house and their money. Murmurs moved through the driveway. Tara looked directly at Judith. Did you take maintenance money for a house you knew Fiona owned? Judith's face hardened. I did not take anything. People contributed. To whom? I asked. To the event. There is no event. I didn't authorize one. I didn't hire a cleaner. I didn't receive maintenance money. You were going to benefit from the cleaning. No one was entering the house. You are twisting this. I opened the folder and held up the certified mail receipt. You signed for my notice 3 weeks ago. Then I held up the tracking confirmation. Blake received his the next day. Blake stepped closer. Anyone can mail a letter. Yes. And when the owner mails a letter denying access, you do not get to ignore it because you rented long games. A woman near the back asked, so she really told you not to come? Judith turned to her. She was emotional. I was clear, I said. Henry walked toward the porch. What did the letter say? I handed him a copy. He read it in silence. Then he looked at Judith. This says no one has permission without written approval. She was grieving, Judith said. So were you, he replied. You still signed for it. That was the first time anyone older than me challenged my mother without immediately softening the words. She looked betrayed. Henry, this is family business. I paid you $450. That was for food and planning. The memo says cleaning fee. I did not write the memo. You told me what to write. Judith's voice rose. Everyone is acting like I stole money. I pulled out Tara's receipt and Henry's transfer confirmation. I have proof of 7 payments so far. 3 say maintenance. 2 say cleaning. 1 says house expenses. 1 says food and bounce house. Her eyes moved quickly over the papers. You went behind my back. You used my property in front of mine. Blake pointed toward the folder. You're waving private payments around to humiliate her. She invited the payers. Tara took the copy from Henry and read it. Then she looked at me. You sent this before I called you. Yes. And she told us you would calm down once we arrived. Yes. Tara turned to my mother. You knew. Judith's mouth opened, but no answer came out immediately. That silence did more than any accusation could have. I took out the deed. This house was transferred to me. Here is the ownership record. Here are the current tax documents. Here is the insurance policy in my name. I placed each page on the porch railing. Here are the utility bills. Electricity, water, trash pickup, and seasonal maintenance. Then the repair invoices. Roof repair, dock boards, pest treatment, screen door, plumbing inspection. I looked at the people gathered below me. I paid these while most of you were posting pictures that said, whole family together. I was not invited to those reunions. I found out afterward. A few people looked down. One cousin said, I thought you didn't like coming. That is what Judith told everyone. My mother snapped. You always said these events were chaotic. I said the house was being damaged and no one was taking responsibility. That is not the same as saying I didn't want to be included. Blake shook his head. You complained every year. I asked why I was missing from every invitation. You were difficult. In this family, difficult usually meant I asked who was paying. No one laughed. I showed the photos from the house inspection. The screen door is broken. Life jackets are missing. Trash was left in the shed. A mattress cover was stained and put back on the bed. 2 dock boards are damaged. The waste pickup fee was not paid after the last reunion. A relative near the back said, "I thought Judith handled cleanup." "So did I," Henry said. Judith's voice went sharp. "I cannot believe you are doing this over a few household problems. It is not about one screen door." "Then what is it about?" "You used this house to create a family picture that left me out. Then when I inherited it, you told everyone it still belonged to you. You collected money, ignored written notice, and brought 19 people here because you thought I would be too embarrassed to say no in public." She stared at me. "That is not what happened." "Then explain it." "I was preserving a tradition. A tradition that excluded the owner." "You were not the owner then." "No. I was the person paying for repairs." Blake moved toward the steps again. "We're already here. Open the door. We can sort this out later." "No. Stop trying to win. I am not debating access." He put one foot on the bottom step. I kept my voice level. "If anyone forces entry, I will press charges. I am saying that clearly once." He looked past me toward the door. A uniformed officer who had been parked a short distance away stepped closer to the edge of the property. He didn't draw attention to himself. He didn't shout. He simply became visible. Blake saw him. His foot came off the step. Judith looked horrified. "You called the police on your own family?" "I asked for a neutral presence because Blake tested the lock after receiving notice." "I was checking the house," Blake said. "You were checking whether your old key worked. This is insane." "No. It is documented." He looked at the camera above the porch. For the first time that morning he had nothing to say. I had one more piece of evidence. I found a voicemail from Marlene. Judith's face changed before I even touched my phone. That reaction told several people more than the voicemail would. I played it from the beginning. Marlene's voice came through the speaker, thin but unmistakably clear. "Fiona, I handled the paperwork we discussed. Judith and Blake know why. If they ever act surprised, do not let that confuse you. Blake came by with a form he said would let him manage the house if I got too tired. He said you would make too many rules. I told him no. Judith knows. They both know why I chose you. Do not let them call it confusion later. Fiona, you kept this place standing when everyone else treated it like a free vacation." The driveway went silent. Even the kids seemed to sense that the adults had stopped pretending. Henry looked at Blake. "You tried to get control of the house before she died?" Blake rubbed the back of his neck. "It wasn't like that." "What was it like?" Tara asked. "She was getting older. Someone needed to manage things." "Fiona was already managing things," Henry said. "She would have locked everyone out." I looked at him. "You mean exactly what I am doing now, after you ignored written notice?" He pointed at me. "See? This is what I told her." "No. This is what you created." Judith stepped between us. Marlene was sick. She was confused. She named both of you and described the document. She did not understand how much this house meant to the family. She understood exactly how much work it required. Judith's eyes filled with tears. For years, those tears had ended conversations. Someone would comfort her, and the original issue would disappear under the accusation that I had been too harsh. This time, no one moved right away. She looked around at the relatives. I was trying to keep everyone together. Tara folded her arms. "You told us Fiona agreed." "I said she would come around." "You collected money." "For the reunion." After she said there was no reunion, Judith turned to me. "You made me look like a thief. You did that without my help." Her face went white. A cousin near the bounce house trailer asked the driver whether the deposit was refundable. The driver said he needed an answer because he had another delivery. "Take it back," Tara said. My mother spun toward her. "Tara. No. We are not setting up a bounce house in a driveway where we were told not to come." One by one, the practical parts of the reunion started collapsing. The trailer pulled away. Someone carried a cooler back to a minivan. Another person folded the chairs they had just opened. A few children complained, and their parents quietly redirected them with snacks and promises of swimming somewhere else. One relative muttered that I could have handled it privately. I looked at him. I did. I sent notice privately. Judith brought the audience. He didn't answer. Another said, "This is still hard on the kids." I agree, I said. The adults who brought them after being warned should explain it. My mother made a sound of disgust. You have an answer for everything. No. I have records for this. Henry turned toward Judith. Where did the money go? This is not the time. It became the time when you brought everyone to Fiona's driveway, I said. She glared at me. Henry didn't back down. I sent $450. Tara sent $300. Others paid too. Where is it? I used some of it for food. A cousin opened the back of her SUV and looked at the bag she had brought herself. What food? Supplies. Reservations. Planning. Show us, Tara said. Judith's eyes flashed. I do not have to submit receipts to my own family. The irony was so obvious that even Blake looked away. Several relatives began asking for their money back. Not everyone apologized to me. That would have been unrealistic. Some people were angry because their weekend had been disrupted. A few blamed both sides because that was easier than admitting they had benefited from the lie. One older relative said Marlene should have divided the property equally, as if her clear decision were an administrative error. But no one entered the house. That mattered. After about 40 minutes, most of the cars were gone. The group that still wanted to gather moved to a public park with a rented picnic shelter. Tara arranged it on her phone from the passenger seat of her car. Everyone paid their own share directly. My mother left without looking at me. Blake stayed long enough to call me cold. You ruined the only place where this family could be together. No. I stopped letting you use a place where you never included me. You always wanted to be in charge. I wanted the person making decisions to be the person carrying the responsibility. You're going to end up alone in that house. Then at least I'll know who left the trash. He shook his head and walked away. The officer waited until Blake's car was out of the driveway, then asked whether I needed anything else. I said no and thanked him. When the last vehicle disappeared down the road, the lake house became quiet again. The porch was littered with small evidence of the gathering that never happened. A paper napkin had blown under the railing. Someone had left a bottle of bug spray near the steps. Tire marks crossed the grass where the bounce house trailer had turned around. I picked up the napkin and sat down. My hand started shaking only then. I didn't cry because I regretted what I had done. I cried because I finally understood how much of my energy had gone into proving I wasn't the person my mother described. For years, I had thought the real injury was not being invited. It was worse than that. I had been useful enough to call when the roof leaked, responsible enough to pay insurance, patient enough to clean up, and forgettable enough to exclude from the photos. My family had not failed to remember me. They remembered exactly which version of me benefited them. Tara called that evening. I should have asked you before believing her, she said. Yes, I replied. You should have. She was quiet. I'm sorry. It was not a dramatic apology. She didn't blame stress or claim she had always secretly known. She simply admitted what she had done. That made it easier to believe. Thank you, I said. She still hasn't refunded me. I'm not surprised. I told everyone not to send her more money. That is between all of you and her. I know. A week later, Henry called. I should have noticed you were missing, he said. From which summer? He exhaled. Too many. He told me he had gone through old photos and realized there were years when everyone else appeared again and again while I was absent. I believed Judith when she said you didn't like the gatherings. I told you I wasn't invited. You did. You called it miscommunication. I did that too. I appreciated that he didn't ask me to make him feel better. A few days later, he mailed me several old pictures of Marlene from before the reunions became so organized. In one photo, she and I were sitting on the dock with fishing poles. I was maybe 10. My hair was tangled, and Marlene was laughing at something outside the frame. Henry had written on the back, "You were always there before people started deciding the story for you." I kept the photo. I didn't erase the history just because he finally saw it. Over the next month, the financial part of the fallout became clearer. Judith had collected more than $3,000 from relatives. She had spent some on food orders, the bounce house deposit, and supplies. The rest was less clear. She eventually returned portions to several people after Henry kept asking for receipts. She never sent me maintenance money. That was fine. I didn't want money that had been collected without my consent. I wanted the lie exposed. Blake also had to answer questions about past damage. He admitted he had broken the screen door latch while carrying in a cooler the previous summer. He claimed the missing life jackets were probably lost by children. He said the dock boards were old anyway. For the first time, my mother could not make those problems disappear by telling me not to be difficult. I sent written rules for any future use of the lake house. Requests had to be made in advance. The number of guests had to be stated. Overnight visitors required a signed agreement. A refundable deposit covered damage and cleaning. Whoever used the house was responsible for trash, linens, and locking up. No one could give access to someone else. Blake was not allowed there without my written permission and supervision until he paid toward the damage he admitted causing. My mother responded with one sentence. "You have turned Marlene's home into a business." I replied, "No. I turned access into permission instead of assumption." She didn't answer. Most relatives did not request access. That told me something too. They had described the house as emotionally essential when they thought they could use it for free. Once access involved planning, responsibility, and a deposit, the family tradition suddenly became flexible. 2 months later, Tara asked whether she and her husband could visit for a quiet weekend. She didn't say, "We're family." She didn't ask me to waive the rules. She sent the dates, the number of guests, and offered the deposit before I mentioned it. I agreed. Before they left, she texted me photos of the clean kitchen, locked windows, and bag trash. She also told me one of the porch bulbs had burned out, and asked whether I wanted her to replace it. That was the first time someone had used the house and treated me like the owner instead of an obstacle. Henry did not ask to stay. He came for an afternoon, brought 2 new life jackets, and helped replace the loose porch railing. We didn't have a grand conversation about forgiveness. He measured wood. I held the level. We drank iced tea on the steps. At one point he said, "Your mother is telling people you destroyed the family tradition." I heard. "She leaves out the part where she collected money. She leaves out a lot." He nodded. I should have pushed sooner. Yes. He looked at me. "You're not going to make this easy for me, are you?" "I'm not going to make it harder. I'm just not going to pretend." He accepted that. Judith's final attempt came in a text late one night. "Marlene would be heartbroken. You got the house and still had to punish everyone. You made me look like a thief and destroyed the one tradition that held this family together." I read it while sitting at the same kitchen table where I had first studied the deed. A year earlier I would have written 5 paragraphs. I would have listed dates, softened my words, explained my pain, and asked her to understand. This time I sent one sentence. I didn't ruin the tradition. I stopped donating the house they used to erase me. She replied that I was cold. I did not respond. The next morning Blake called twice and left a voicemail saying I would regret choosing property over family. I deleted it. I had not chosen property over family. I had chosen reality over a performance in which I paid the bills, fixed the damage, stayed out of the pictures, and smiled when someone called it unity. Later that fall, I went back to the lake house alone. The trees had started turning. The water was darker, and the dock creaked under my weight. I cleaned the kitchen, checked the windows, and replaced the bulb Tara had mentioned. Then I made peach tea and sat on the porch with Marlene's grocery list tucked inside the cover of a book. The driveway was empty. For years, an empty driveway would have felt like proof that I had been rejected again. That day it felt peaceful. The house was not a prize. It was not revenge. It was a responsibility Marlene had trusted me with because I had already been carrying it. I finally understood that being remembered only when someone wanted the keys was not belonging. For the first time in 12 summers they finally remembered me. They just didn't like that I remembered everything too. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.